It's time for another Film Rescue Quick Fix. Today we're talking about Silent Hill, directed by Christoph Gans. Gans?
I think it's Gans.
Gans. I wish this movie was Gans. I think you and I both had the same opinion on this one going into it, and then it's kind of changed. I used to think this was one of the best video game adaptations.
Yeah, I actually saw this in the theater when it came out, and I walked out thinking, wow, that was pretty good. Wasn't great, but it was pretty good. And I, for the longest time, thought, yeah, this is probably one of the best adaptations of any game. And now watching it years later, I have a very different opinion.
Yeah, we delved into Silent Hill 2 on your podcast, That Weird Ass Game, and just that was such a fun psychological dive. I was really excited to see the movie again because I haven't seen it in 10 yeremember
Yeah, something like that.
It's been a bit. I saw it shortly after theaters. It had been a while, and I also remember I remember this being pretty good. All the monsters were in there. The idea of dropping down into hell every time the siren goes off, we had an air raid siren in the town I grew up in, so anytime that would go off as a fire alarm, everyone would be like, oh shit, going down into hell, guys.
Yeah, but how much psychological horror did we actually encounter in this film?
I mean, it was definitely psychologically horrifying to commit into my eyes. You and I both had to take breaks watching this.
Yeah, this movie is 2 hours, and there's enough plot for maybe 70 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, Sean Bean's B story is literally the story, and it just gets relegated off to the side because we wouldn't know anything about anything unless it were for him, and then Alessa giving us an actual narration drop almost at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's just this movie is all plot, but the movie isn't interesting. I even said in the chat, unless you're coming into this film with prior knowledge, we've said this before, the films should stand on their own.
Right.
Could you understand this if you hadn't played any of the games?
I definitely wouldn't have got the references. Who the fuck is Pyramid Head to this story?
Exactly. And by the way, Pyramid Head should not appear in this film.
Right.
That's a character specific to Silent Hill 2 storyline, because that is sort of James Sunderland, the main character of Silent Hill 2. That's his sort of vision of somebody that will administer punishment towards him for his crimes.
Right.
That character doesn't work in any other story.
I was weak. That's why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now. I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
And to be quite honest, that version of that character looks nothing like the character from the game. He doesn't match in any way at all. He looks like he's juiced up and roided out. It looks like just a big tough guy. He doesn't look lanky or scrawny. It doesn't look correct. I know cosplayers that could do that version better than they ever did in this film. It does not look good for a horror film.
Right.
He's too big. He's too imposing. It doesn't look right for this kind of film.
And who are the miners? Was that explained why they want to kill people? Or
That's not a thing in the games. The game, there is no mine, and it is not in West Virginia.
Right.
They based it around the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania, which actually does have a coal mine fire still burning to this day.
I have been there. It is a dump.
Yeah, it's all wrecked, it's all destroyed, it's toxic, the air is polluted, there's no way to live there. I think there's 5 people still living in the general area, but that's about it.
Yeah, there's one operational church, there's one fire station, and then along there, if you want to call it a main street, there's about 6 houses that are not completely dilapidated.
Man, God.
It's a spot. But Silent Hill, not a terrible start. I think I was very engaged up and until I think this is the part where you took a break when our main character Rose gets arrested.
Yeah, I was just because so the general story is that she's headed to Silent Hill with her kid Sharon, named Cheryl in the game. I don't know why they made this change. I always hate stupid changes like that. That's stupid. It's basically the same general opening as the game. But what happens is she gets pulled over by Sybil, the cop that's also in the game, played by Laurie Holden, and instead of like listening to the cop and just asking what seems to be the problem, officer, she just peels away and takes off and heading into Silent Hill, crashes the car, runs around for a little bit, and encounters weird demon minion things that look like terrible PS2 graphics characters. The CGI in this movie did not age well. There's so much of it. It's awful. You should not have this much CGI in a movie like this.
Yeah, it was definitely like very roller coaster-esque.
Yeah, this is like an amusement park ride, and it should not feel like that.
No.
But then she gets caught by Sybil again, and then she starts handcuffing her. Rhoda Mitchell starts getting handcuffed, and she's like, What did I do? And I'm like, bitch, you literally just ran away from the cops.
Yeah.
You just committed a crime, and now you're wondering, like, oh, god damn.
Yeah, that's kind of, her job is to arrest criminals like you.
Yeah. I had to take a break at that point. I took a couple of breaks watching this movie.
Yeah, and it wasn't even anything happening in the scene that I was upset about, because immediately after that we get one of the acid vomiting creatures, and I'm like, okay, this is we're getting back into it, but it was the dialogue that was killing me, and the dialogue throughout this movie is either like actually messing up something the last person said, or just so dry and bland. Even down to like the finale where she's going wit for wit with Christabella. She's not making any points. Like nothing, they're not actually arguing, they're just screaming words at each other.
Yeah, the script for this film was written by Roger Avery, who was one of the co-writers on Pulp Fiction. I guess we now know who did the heavy lifting on Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
I think that God came down from heaven and stopped him. Oh, the fuck's happening?
I wonder if that was just like hey buddy, would you look over this real quick and make sure I didn't fuck anything up?
It's probably proofreading for spelling errors.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the ideas in a vacuum, the part where I had to take a break was Pyramid Head, who again should not be in the movie, tears a woman's skin off.
Yeah, you want to talk about bad taste.
Like, when did this psychological horror story become Saw?
Yeah, I just...
And then he chucks it at the door and splashes blood inside, and that's the catalyst that makes the church mad at the Rose and Sybil. Oh boy!
I mean, what's the thing that sucks is that the monsters in this film, they're supposed to be representative of things psychologically connected to the characters. If you're going to use that acid-spitting character, which is named the Lying Figure from Silent Hill 2, that's a representation of James Sunderland's internal suffering.
Right.
That doesn't work here.
Yeah. I mean, and our main character, Rose, she doesn't have an arc.
No one has an arc.
You could maybe argue that Alyssa gets the arc of the movie.
Jesus. Alyssa becomes a demon by the very end of the film.
Right. Yeah, you can definitely tell that the director played through the games maybe a little.
Probably skipped the cutscenes and didn't pay attention to the story.
Yeah, he got like the screenshots and maybe some like outline drawings of like, wouldn't this be a fucked up looking creature? And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, that looks good. Like the significance was kind of lost across all of this. Yeah.
And the excuse that, oh, it's a parallel dimension. I don't know how many times I have to explain this fucking bullshit. It's not a parallel dimension. The idea is that in the town of Silent Hill, there is a cult, and the daughter of Dahlia Gillespie apparently has psychic powers, and they want to give birth to a demon that will bring about the end of the world. So they use her as a vessel to try to bring this demon into the real world, but something goes wrong, a fire breaks out, and she gets horribly burned and is in a coma, and she's on life support basically in the town of Silent Hill, and because she has psychic powers, it's projecting the images and nightmarish thoughts of the demon into the real world.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much like that movie Sphere.
Yeah.
And another comparison is the film Solaris, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, which we talked about on Split the Difference. That film involves an alien planet that is projecting the thoughts and manifestations of people's inner psyche into reality.
Yeah, and we even said on that one that Sphere was almost directly lifted from that story.
Yeah, Michael Crichton directly lifted that from Solaris, and Silent Hill 2 directly lifted that concept from Solaris as well.
It's a great concept too. Like, it is definitely, because it's something that it's not a mystery that you can unfold by like finding clues, even though that's really where the movie devolves to.
Yeah. The thing that you'd be most afraid of is what's inside your own mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the most frustrating part is that it's two split dimensions. The way that that's shown in the school scene was the best, like, no words version to show that. But then thinking back on the game, I was like, wait a second, there's no way he could be in that town while she's in that town.
No.
That's not how any of this works.
No, it's not. It can't be that way. And also, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, well, what happens if somebody moves a physical object in the real world? Does that mean it moves in the parallel dimension as well?
Yeah.
It makes it more complicated than what I described.
Exactly.
They didn't think this through, and it's clearly people that only got the Cliff Notes version of the game, and this really isn't that hard. It's not that complicated, but it's definitely not something you can do for a film. This needed to be like a mini-series or something like that, so you had time to expound on it.
Absolutely.
It would be like a 4-hour mini-series, which, hey, look at that. The gameplay time of the first game, 4 to 6 hours. What a fucking shock.
Exactly, because I mean, even in the original game, you got really interesting additives to the story. Like Dr. Kaufman is basically excised from the movie, right? I mean, he's not in there at all.
He's not in the movie at all. Dahlia Gillespie has drastically changed. They added all these random characters like Christabella. She's not even in the games, I don't think. Yeah, like they changed Harry Mason to Rose. Like, I don't mind changing the main character to a woman, that's fine, but do it with a purpose.
Right.
There's really no reason. And then I saw, like, what the reason why Christoph Gans did that, and you read that quote that I sent to you about what Christoph Gans thought about women.
Yeah, we can throw that up on the screen. We don't need to say it out loud.
Yeah, I don't want to say that out loud. I'll type it out and I'll put it on the screen because, dear God, it's repulsive.
Fuck you, asshole.
Yeah, like anybody that wants to make this case that it's a feminist film because it has a female lead character, no, not even close. This is incredibly offensive to women.
And like the genuine quickest fix is make Christabella a guy and then make this a story about like motherhood and like awful patriarchy.
Yeah. And also
Easy.
make Alessa not a horrible person because in the game she's not a demon.
Right.
She's an innocent bystander that has been taken advantage of by this town. She's not a demon. She's not a bad person. She's caught in the worst situation possible.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even some of the X-Men stories did stuff like this with like, was it the early stuff for Legion was a lot like this, where, it's kind of an innocent child that's projecting all this evil into the world because of their imagination.
Yeah, Legion, he doesn't know how to control himself, so he suppresses it with drugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the real fix we want to go with here is about a movie that maybe you haven't seen before, and I would highly recommend. Jesse, I'll let you explain some of the plot for this film.
So the film I wanted to compare this to was, we discussed Solaris just now, and Solaris was directed by a guy named Andrei Tarkovsky, who is widely considered one of the best filmmakers of all time. And his follow-up to Solaris was a film called Stalker, based on a book called Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. Roadside Picnic is essentially about this zone that is basically an alien invasion has occurred, and it has basically destroyed the world, and then the aliens left. So all that's left is the remnants of civilization, and they're trying to pick up the pieces, but there's these weird kind of temporal shifts in reality, there's shifts in gravity, there's all kinds of toxic material all over the place, and people are studying it, and there's people that go into these zones called stalkers. And the stalker is basically a person that goes in there illegally to basically scavenge. Mm-hmm. And in the film, it's never explained why the zone exists. There is a game based on Stalker, but the reason is also changed there in that it's a second Chernobyl incident. Yeah, so there's 3 separate versions of this story that all have 3 separate reasons for why the same thing is happening.
Right.
I'm not quite sure why they did that, but they did. But in the film, it's never explained why the zone is weird. It never mentions an alien invasion. All you know is like the general gist that some kind of apocalypse occurred. Humanity is in its last days, and stalkers go into the zone, or they transport people into the zone. And apparently in the center of the zone, there is a room where if you enter it, you can achieve your heart's desire. Whatever you crave and desire the most, you can have it because of the power of this one room. So the stalker of the film is trying to get these two individuals to that room while also avoiding weird shifts in reality and weird hallucinations and temporal fluxes in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film. It's very long. It's 3 hours, but it's phenomenal. And if you didn't like Solaris, watch Stalker, because it's, in my opinion, I'd say Stalker is better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so if you wanted to do a Silent Hill movie, just adapt Stalker. That's it. That's it.
I think it's perfect. I mean, Silent Hill doesn't even have to have specifically supernatural undertones or overtones. However, something like Stalker allows you to maybe imply both, maybe imply neither. It's really up to not just the interpretation of the movie, but the interpretation of the characters. And I think Stalker, because it's so long, the reason it's so long is to get to know these characters, because a lot of it's just people talking.
Yeah, a lot of it's just people kind of standing around talking. That's what makes it satisfying when you finally get to the room, though, because you know everyone's motivation for why they want to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing missing, specifically from the Silent Hill movie, is all these characters are talking at each other, but not to each other. And they're not talking about anything. They're just expressing what they want to do next.
Yeah, you know how we always say you need that one scene of people just kind of dicking around talking?
Yeah.
Is there ever that scene in this movie?
Not at any point.
It even happens in the games.
Yeah.
Even in the games, there's scenes of people just kind of standing around talking. Like, there's a scene where Harry Mason is in the hospital and he's talking to Lisa Garland, who has a fucking cameo in this movie, and it's bullshit. Like, there are really heart-wrenching moments in these games, and, like, it's not just a horror franchise. Like, it's a game franchise with a philosophy. There's a deep, intricate philosophy to this franchise. Like, you never see a dead person's face on screen. There are no like dead bodies. You never see their faces, because death is something that's permanent. Death is something, you know, there's a finality to it. So death is treated with respect. Like when you see Harry Mason's dead body in the third game, his head is cut off at the top of the screen by the widescreen projection.
Right.
You don't see his dead face. Like they murked their own main character from the first game in the third one, and you never see his face. Like,
yeah,
there's a respect there. And then you see, but the only time you actually see anybody really kind of die a horrible death was Lisa's character in the first game, where she melts away into becoming one of the zombie nurses. It is like, fuck Ares' death in Final Fantasy VII. That was way more heartbreaking. I mean it, man. That was way more heart-wrenching.
Hot take. I like it, though. Yeah, I'm very on board for this. Especially, I think a thing that gets lost in video games, and when you adapt them to movies, is that your connection to the game comes from your experience with it. You are in control of it.
Yeah.
So when you're adapting the active to the passive, there needs to be something to engage you actively. And the only thing engaging you in the Silent Hill movie is what is the next clue to get to the next thing, to maybe see Sharon for a second while Rose screams her head off calling to her. That happens like 4 times across the movie.
Yeah, it gets repetitive and it gets boring, and that's where I think that diverging from the games would be good. Don't adapt to the game storyline.
Right, exactly.
Don't explain why Silent Hill is weird. Don't go into that stuff, because you're not going to have time for it. You don't have time for it, and also the storyline of the games is so intricately wound together and is so wrapped up in a nice, neat bow by the end of the third game that if you try to adapt it, you're going to screw everything up. You can't get to the stuff that makes it really good. And doing stuff that works well in an interactive medium, like, hey, find this key to go to that place, that's fine for a game.
Right.
But the story, please. Yep.
the thing that pushes a story along in a movie is characters and their needs, right? The thing that pushes you along in the game is your need to get to the next thing in the game. You are inherently using that thing that needs to be shown in characters on screen, and I think that's totally just lost. Besides, I need to get my little girl to this weird town she's dreaming about, and then I need to get her back. Those are the only motivations in it.
Yeah, and it's like it's writing 101. How do you describe your characters? Who are they? What do they want? And why do they want it?
Right.
Like, and I can't tell you at all who the hell Rose even is. What is her character? Like, I really don't have a fucking clue.
Like, what's her personality?
She doesn't have one. She is woman. She is mom.
Right.
That's it. Also, one last thing I wanted to mention was that the sound in this movie, is it excessively loud to you?
It's loud and soft, because there was a couple moments, specifically when they're out in the ash, where like I had a hard time understanding them. I thought she said Cheryl at one point instead of Sybil.
Because her name is Cheryl in the game.
Right.
Pick one, dude. Just yeah. Another thing that bothered me was that I'm getting a little tired of the creepy girl with the long black hair.
Oh, she was hamming it up with that.
Yeah, I just the scene where she says, "I am the Reaper," and I was kind of giggling to myself. Like there was better audio for that line in one of the TV spots.
Oops.
They changed the audio in the TV spot, and it actually sounded like a creepy demon voice, and I was like, "Oh, well, why didn't you just do that?"
I am the Reaper.
Who are you?
I am the
Reaper. Silent Hill.
Interesting. That's way better.
Yeah, I just whatever. Yeah, make it into Stalker, have it be like 3 people going into the town, just like venturing there, and they hear there's a room, and they're like tracking down Alessa or something like that. They think that, oh, there's this mystery about this woman who was burned, and we're gonna go see, and we're gonna check it out. Kind of like Stand By Me or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you actually had a pick for a director, which is Frank Darabont.
I'd love Frank Darabont. However, your pick was also just aces.
Osgood Perkins.
Yes.
Yes. If you've never seen Blackcoat's Daughter, please go watch Blackcoat's Daughter. It's fantastic.
Oh, and Gretel and Hansel for the same reason. Oh, yeah, boy.
Yep. Although I would also throw in Brandon Cronenberg, because we watched Possessor recently, and just goddamn, that movie's amazing.
Oh yeah, I'd watch a Brandon Cronenberg version of this. Any of those 3. Maybe we leave this one to the YouTube comments. Of the 3, who would you like to see direct a Stalker take of a Silent Hill movie?
Yeah, I will say one thing you should never, ever, 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 ever do: don't watch the sequel to this movie, because it fucking sucks. It is way worse.
What's the Rotten Tomatoes rating? That's 10%.
10%. Yeah, and that deserves it. Yeah.
That sounds like a great time.
Yeah. It's an adaptation of Silent Hill 3. And apparently Pyramid Head becomes a good guy by the end of the movie. Let's end it there.
Sounds good. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel. Check out some of the videos that will get suggested at the end here. We really appreciate it if you'd leave a like as well. This is a spinoff from a larger podcast and series of podcasts that Montressor Media runs. You can check all of those out on any podcast streaming apps. The name of the major show is called The Film Rescue Show, where we do basically this over the course of an hour and a half to 2 hours. Sometimes more, depends on the movie. You can also donate to our Patreon, patreon.com/Montressor Media. For $1, you can get access to all of our podcasts, early access to episodes of this nature, as well as the podcast short films and everything else that we have in the works. We are a growing team, and every dollar helps us. We have a goal set right now. If we hit $300 in patron donations, we'll be able to get a studio and start doing this live and over Twitch and video versions of everything, which I guess people like better because, hey, that sounds fun. You can also follow me at Seth X Decker, and you can follow Jesse at Hardcore B-Shot on Twitter. You can also follow at Film Rescue Show if you'd like to be a part of the main podcast, or if you have a quick pitch, you can send it there or to our email, filmrescueshow@gmail.com. Well, I've been your Pitchmaster General, Seth.
And I've been Jesse.
And thank you for checking out this episode. Please feel free to check out another one. You probably have something popping up on your screen around now, suggesting something else to watch. Give one of those a watch. Give us a like down below. Appreciate you being here.
Good night.